we're going to try again. Here we are. Big wind here today. Big wind. We didn't have this much wind yesterday. But we're going to try to do our river talk with Task Force. I think the connection here is working, but we have no viewers, so that's interesting. I'll wait for a couple. I guess the first thing to consider is Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan is no longer he's resigning as Speaker of the House. He's not going after his seat again. He's not going to run for re-election. We, of course, were in Milwaukee trying to pepper the Nellen campaign, N-E-H-L-E-N campaign, with different questions about why so much cover activity for the Awans. Almost to the point where we really went to every congressional office, talked about the Awans, and they all told us sort of the same thing. It's going to end in the CAO's office, and the CAO, the Chief Administrative Officer, has told us that the Awans that decision lies with the Speaker of the House. We went to the House Committee on Administration, House Committee on Administration, HCA. They said the same thing. That decision lies with the Speaker of the House. We went all over the House and talked to all kinds of different reps, and they said, well, to be honest with you, the Speaker of the House has told us not to talk about that. Direct all questions to Speaker of the House. Now, this is aspiring in Congress. This is weapons in one direction, drugs in the other. The operation in Virginia is $200 million alone. It seems like $200 million a month. Was that the ACG, the Annapolis Consulting Group that was based in Imran's home, where I found the hard drives, where Anthony Taggart said the government hard drives were, the government Blackberries were, the secure Blackberries were, with government markings. Also with that very funny toner cartridge, that potentially ultraviolet toner cartridge that would be making copies of all these different places where they might be used, like the State Department and other confidential uses. So we don't know the whole story yet. But a lot of folks have remarked that Paul Ryan acted more like a co-conspirator than just someone giving cover to an operation. If you were giving cover to an operation, you'd kind of every once in a while want to say, hey, we realize that this was a bad thing. The Awans shouldn't have been stealing money. We're going to have an inquiry. We're going to push out an Inspector General report. We're going to say how many. We're going to do basically a deep dive on what they got, what they sent to Pakistan, how many terabytes, what was in each packet. Here's the amount of money that was sent out of the credit union. Here's the number of bad loans, and just leave it at that. Just say, okay, well, we got hacked, and here's what it cost us. But we didn't get any of that. We didn't get any details. We didn't even get pictures until we went to court of any of the co-conspirators. We still don't have pictures of most of the co-conspirators. So it leads you to believe now, with new developments today, that this was half of the equation. We were seeing the House half of the drugs in one direction, weapons in the other. And potentially there was a Senate side to this operation. So I know how windy it is, and I know people are going to complain about the wind in about 2 seconds. But if you look at all the actions, and this task force found this morning, where a Bulgarian man by the name of Andreev, think of Andre Taggart, and then driving an electrical vehicle, so it's Andre and then EV. Think of him with an EV vehicle, was arrested in Miami. I'm going to do it like this. Hopefully you can speak into the mic there, and I can still. So in Miami. And what was the weapons charge? It was weapons, Hezbollah? Was it?
Yeah, it was.
You got to speak right into the mic.
Using Hezbollah to transfer weapons and other illegal activity into Syria.
Shipping from the port of Miami?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
We don't know?
Yeah, all the details. It was just put out. I've read some of it, and I don't know that all the details have been released as of now.
Okay, so we can look up, there's a new name, a new entity. This is going to be an important entity, I think, because many of you know Andre EV, as the newest billionaire, newest billionaire on the Forbes list. He lives in London, England, but I believe he also has a place. He has a place in Rockville, Maryland, I think.
Yes, he does.
I think he also has a place out in the Madeleine Albright School of Foreign Policy out in Denver, doesn't he?
Yeah, he has. There's some connections in Denver, Colorado.
His wife lives near Fort Lewis, near the disembarkation center and supply center for Afghanistan,
right?
Out in Washington. So it's just an interesting person. Now we know that John McCain and Biden and Lindsey Graham had their kind of hands in the cookie jar in Bulgaria, working with an arsenal, a place called a weapons factory called Arsenal, making designs in Bulgaria from, let's say, the Raytheon missile systems, other defense contractors that were located in South Carolina, also located in Texas, other ones located in Arizona like Raytheon, potentially also Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, and Lockheed. So now we have this ACG, and there's a board of about 12 people on these ACGs. If you don't remember, and I'll create a playlist out of my in my videos. ACG, there was 5 of them. One was based in Imran's home. The other one was based, I believe, I want to say in Alabama. I'm going to say Jeff Sessions right off the bat for that. One in northern Georgia, I'm going to say just over the border from South Carolina. I'm going to say that's probably Lindsey Graham's consortium. Of course, there was one in Phoenix, Arizona. To me that makes sense to assign that to John McCain. And then there's one in Texas. So you think of Senator Cornyn immediately. So we'll match these up. Now it just so happens there's 5 hacking teams. Okay, so 5 hacking teams now, 45 Blackberries, 50 Blackberries. All this may start lining up if we start thinking about the Senate side selling the weapons and the House side selling unfortunately, the drugs that go with it. I know the rationale. The rationale is going to be, hey, it's an unsafe world. We need to secure the world. We need to arm our freedom fighters around the world. It's essential for the world balance, etc. But so we have to teach them with USAID. We have to teach people how to grow poppies. We have to do that. Occasionally we'll have to have modeling contests where 14-year-old Ukrainian girls will come to be shown at Epstein's Island. That's gonna, if you don't have, until you get your crop going, we have other resources, human resources, maybe you might want to access. So, and then of course your mineral wealth. We might need to have you, Mr. Foreign Defense Minister, Mr. Interior Minister, give us all your material wealth to pay for your weapons because you're being threatened. Of course, if you're CIA and running this whole show, you want everybody fighting everybody so that you can be doing a maximum amount in terms of commission across all the different rat lines, right? All the different rat lines. The problem we're seeing now is this is just not speculation anymore. This isn't just working theory anymore. This is starting to look like the server was the House caucus server. It looks like Ryan was complicit, knowing full well this is where the brokered transactions were occurring. We know that it's not just drugs and not just money transfers. The money transfers may very well be that the money transfers were on the Russian side, maybe through HSBC, like the old Iran-Contra, which was through BCCI, same kind of London banking, and then the weapons brokering and drugs brokering was happening through Pakistan, just like the old Iran-Contra. So this is a setup that it looks like, with the Awans, we have a real good picture of half of the bagel, if you will, half of it, but it's not a whole bagel, or one hand cannot clap by itself. You need to have the drugs coming the other way and the weapons going the other way. You need the bagel with the cream cheese in the middle, and that is going to be the Senate side. Was there hacking teams? Word is coming in now. Andy McCabe's buying property in these 5 different cities Were these the 5 key cities or the 20 key cities? We still don't know, but it's looking more and more like Paul Ryan is more than just a cover-up artist in this situation. The wind's died down. I'm going to bring now in our expert analyst, our whistleblower, detective turned whistleblower, and your thoughts so far on the Paul Ryan involvement.
My thoughts are that Paul Ryan has probably needed to step down a long time ago. That's my own personal opinion. I think that every attempt that we've made to expose the Awans spy ring in Congress has just not only been met with resistance by the Democrats, who we know had hired these guys allegedly, but there's like no Republican support. And then they say go to go to the CAO. Well, the CAO is Omar Awan. So it always
how could Omar Awan,
who I met at Imran's house. I don't understand how that, and he's the CAO. So how does Paul Ryan how is he not aware of this? He's the Speaker of the House. How is the leadership not aware of this? And he's stifling what? Yeah,
Omar Awan could not, Omar Awan is not a low-level guy. He's a high-level executive running strategy.
Right.
At the House of Representatives. He's a high-level executive running strategy. So he has to know Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan has to know him. That one guy that one day was saying, leave the Russians out of this. Yeah. Remember we were in the cafeteria?
Right.
He very much looked like he was working for Paul Ryan. He said, House leadership, I think is what he said, basically get off the X-nay on the Russia A, right, or stop talking about the Russia thing. And then, of course, we had the whole Russia thing break the next day.
Right.
I can't remember. It was some huge Russia story broke the next day. So anyway, your thoughts on the server? Your thoughts on the next thing we've got is contempt, right? Contempt.
Yeah. I saw a tweet, I think, by Jim Jordan this morning talking about it's now in contempt and impeachment needs to start immediately.
Mark Meadows, both for Ray and for Rosenstein.
Because they are just, they're not turning over the paperwork to Congress. Congress has the right to those documents. Congress is the one in charge that oversees them, and they're not turning it over. So holding them in contempt is one thing, but we saw that for in the last administration, several people were held in contempt, and no documents were turned over, and no action was taken. And then these guys are saying it's time to start impeaching people for not upholding the law and their responsibilities.
Well, the one shining light here is whistleblowers, and I know you talk to whistleblowers every day.
Yes.
Both from ever since the Robin Gritz thing, now more federal whistleblowers you're talking to.
Yes.
It was just state and local police, and mainly military, I think.
Yeah.
Before this, but now it's kind of taken a turn more toward FBI.
Well, yeah. There's more. I just think that overall, more whistleblowers within all aspects, whether it's law enforcement or works in different parts of the government, are beginning to come together in a way, and we have strength in numbers and safety in numbers because of retaliation fears, and so.
I think when Paul Ryan resigned yesterday, everyone realized, oh my God, this is way, way worse than we thought. This is way worse. This spy ring thing is not just a spy ring. It is at least a weapons ring, probably also a weapons for drugs ring. We know Project Cassandra. It just makes you think that Cassandra is really 5 operations, not just one for Virginia.
Right.
We got a lot of metadata with Tim Kaine, a lot of metadata with Cory Booker, a lot of metadata with Menendez.
Right.
Got a lot of metadata in Florida.
Coming up through Florida.
Graham.
We've seen maps of direct routes, from Pakistan area, Afghanistan, up into the eastern seaboard ports, and then down up through the southern, coming up through Central America and through the southern border and different ports. We've seen the trucking companies and the various people involved, even having citations at port entries in Arizona, places like that. So.
And it's kind of all the places this ACG has all of these kind of trucking companies almost to match the SIPOVs.
Right.
It's almost matching the SIPOVs now. And I'm wondering if this Andreev family that were the new entity, there's a whole bunch of Andreevs just north of Bethesda
in Rockville.
In Rockville, Maryland, halfway to Frederick, which is where Mark Lambert is with all the with all those folks.
Right.
With all the Krupniks, right?
Right. There's even some Andreevs that have phone numbers and landlines connected to Bethesda, Maryland, which is interesting.
Yeah.
I have those talks.
Rod Rosenstein, obviously, and then this whole Lisa Barsoomian thing has not quite hit yet. This reminds me of yet another thing that you've discovered that hasn't quite hit the mainstream media. InfoWars has discovered it, a few of the alternative media, but active media obviously was way out in front. Then alternative media is now catching up, but still MSM doesn't have this. I haven't seen anybody at MSM pick up the Chappaqua house for Andy McCabe yet. I just saw Drew Pundit.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they probably want to talk too much about that for...
Yeah, I haven't seen much pickup there. But I think that there's, one person let out one fact, some whistleblower let out one fact that was 260 unmaskings by Samantha Power. And that statistic, I mean,
that was just a couple months, right?
That was over 2 months, just 2 months during the transition between November and January. So you wonder how many were done by Samantha Power and that hacking team up there over the 7 or 8 years.
Right. I mean, the statistics. I mean, and Samantha Power, why is she doing unmaskings in the first place?
Right. It should not even
on the National Security Council, and there are very strict rules about that. So it's unbelievable.
The other thing that you looked into was SES and kind of the scandal inside of the Department of the Interior. Of course, BLM being a part of the Department of Interior, I believe, or
Bureau
maybe it's
of Land Management, right?
Yeah, I don't believe it's a part of the Department of Energy, but it might be. It might be. But anyway, what was it? 25 SES were relocated by
33 by Zink.
Zinke.
Okay.
33 sounds awfully Navy's Masonic. I thought it was 25, but anyway, you got 33.
I might have 33 stuck in my brain. I don't know why, but
yeah. But it was 12% of the workforce was reassigned. It was about half minorities, I believe. Everybody filed. Of course, everybody filed EEO actions as I predicted. Doug Gabriel wanting to reduce everybody's salary to $1. I knew that wouldn't go anywhere. Even reassigning folks, and there was no records.
Yeah, there seems to be like this loss of records there. I mean, the statement that was put out that between at least the years 2009 and 2017, literally no policies were followed by these SES people. No policies and procedures. There's lack of records keeping. There's lack of just about everything that they're required to do, and stepping outside any policies and procedures at will. So.
Right. And somebody said, oh, hey, Ryan funded the ISIS beheadings. I don't think Ryan funded the ISIS beheadings, but what the heck was going on? Let's suppose you were running the house and you had a spy ring and you had weapons ring and you had a drug ring. To me, I would say, look, we're going to have our inspector general look into this and issue a report. To me, that's the natural thing to do. And a damage assessment. Yeah. It's like Captain Kirk taking a photon torpedo in the side of the Enterprise and then going, well, we're going to go on. I actually don't want anybody to look at that. Or, the Titanic hitting an iceberg and saying, hey, don't anybody worry about that gash. We're just going to plow ahead. It's a huge hit. Terabytes going to Pakistan, which is a nuclear power. Right. And they are the ones that get the exclusive for shipping stuff from the port of Qasim, where our people don't even radiation test the diplomatic containers coming from Pakistan.
Right. And just as we talked about yesterday, we just had Navy jets blowing up labs in that area, and everyone's wondering, well, but how did this opiate crisis turn into such a monster in the past, 7, 8, 9, however many years? And this is really what has been going on, and this is where the opioids are coming from, and the synthetics. And they first blamed the Taliban, like the Taliban has the sophisticated equipment to have synthetic lab companies, and I just think
they blamed Taliban for about an hour.
Right.
Yeah, and then everybody realized.
Then QAnon actually came out and said, started talking about clowns in America, which I'm not sure what that means, but I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Well, and Q actually came through here on this one because he talked about the Awans.
Right.
Said how they were involved, and then he talked about cleaning house.
Right.
With a kill box around the H. meaning get rid of Paul Ryan, and it certainly did happen. So Q kind of came through, and so I'm beginning to like the new Q.
Yeah.
The new Q is actually something that I'm kind of looking into now. Let's see, I'm talking about shifting gears here a little bit. We had the SES. How about, you want to talk about FBI whistleblowers a little bit more and how you're going to be working with them in the future?
Just that,
I don't know how much you want to say.
Yeah, I want to be careful, but I think the most important thing, just talking to whistleblowers in general, is, they get determined to not only retaliate against you and do just things that are unimaginable to most people. I tweeted that out today. It's unfathomable, the retaliations and the assaults and threats that happen to whistleblowers. But they also like to isolate. They don't want whistleblowers connecting. They don't want the power of whistleblowers' voices to come together. And that's starting to happen, even though they have attempted to stop that at all costs. And so a lot of people are stepping forward and trying to encourage more people to step forward. It's a very scary choice to make, and we all understand that. There's ways that people have to kind of hide their identities or hide their faces because they're targeted. And so we're trying to help bring that community together, because these are the people that took the stand against the corruption and illegality in the government or in their own departments and said, no, I'm not going to turn a blind eye to this. These are the people that should be in charge now.
Have you been following Q?
I have been following Q.
What are the latest Q clues? I guess we could talk about that.
I haven't read today's Q clues, so I mean, I know that you just recently mentioned.
How about the whole, Epstein's Island and the burning of the tunnels and all that?
Yeah, I mean, I know I heard or saw there was a fire and Epstein's Island was burned up, but there was information put out that Epstein had hired a bunch of contractors or something to that effect to bury the tunnels underneath. So like $29 million was mentioned. So I don't know, did he accomplish that? And then there was some sort of action taken, no one knows for sure, but I think some pictures have been posted about something going on underneath the ground there, underneath Epstein's temple, that are very disturbing, and I think everyone can look into that and know what I'm talking about. But
well, there are a lot of records. I won't say how I got involved in this in New York, but Epstein had a place in New York, and there was one in Long Island. There was one called the Stone Fortress up on the Upper East Side on the 82nd, or maybe it was around the 90s. I can't remember exactly. But I believe this compromat nothing new about this compromat. This compromat's been going on a long time. Now, I don't really think it's compromat in Epstein's Island. I think it's just, kids for sale.
Yeah.
Or young 14-year-old models that need homes to live in and don't know when they're being drugged at night, kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, that looks like it may be kind of, coming to the fore.
Yeah, I think a lot of this kind of stuff that we've heard, in the years about Epstein's Island and information that I have, a lot of that is going to come out, and Q posts about that a lot. In fact, what Q has posted kind of consistently is that this need to balance between how much do we release to the public, let them be aware, at the same time not trying to traumatize the public, kind of this balance. And
right.
Because there's a lot of things that are going to be very hard for people to hear, so there's a balance that has to be made there.
Somebody said something about I shouldn't strike the NSA with a broad brush, and I definitely don't want to do that. I know a lot of people. I've met a whole bunch of people in this journey, by the way, that work for the NSA or parents work for the NSA. And the NNSA, though, I do want to say, if I was going to start looking somewhere for the pay-to-play deals, especially around uranium, I would start at the NSA, and both people coming from Navy Intel and people going to the FBI, or vice versa. And that's really where our story has kind of focused. And counterterrorism, counterintelligence, NNSA, CIA, DIA, all those intelligence agencies around national security or weapons of mass destruction. I think we're in the right ballpark. And if you remember, really, I know what I want to talk about is this guy named Mustafa. people may or may not be aware that Mustafa was very close to Paul Ryan. This is where I'm saying it's not just a covering activity anymore. Ryan has all these pictures with Mustafa, and Mustafa is this guy who is on, just like our task force, add the word emergency in front of it, emergency task force for Libya and the emergency task force for Syria. And he's also worked for a senator, and he's worked for a congressman. Now, this Libyan emergency task force is basically a funnel for ISIS to get ISIS, or the whatever those brigade of May 19th or September 12th or whatever those rebels were, to overthrow Gaddafi. And then they did the same thing in Syria and attempted the same thing. Same group, same guy. So this guy isn't Syrian. He's not Libyan. He was based in Egypt, in Cairo, but he was born a long time ago in Damascus, and he's another one of these people that have been educated in the United States,
right.
Are sent in to say, just like Al-Attar was sent in to say, we need to overthrow Saddam. Right? He's the same exact Hezbollah or whatever. I don't know if it's Hezbollah or Hamas, put in to say, okay, you're our overthrow guy. So we've been funneling weapons. I mean, Paul Ryan is directly involved in this, not tangentially involved in it. He's directly involved with Mustafa. I did it in my morning report. So we really have to unpack this whole thing now and say, wait a minute, Paul Ryan's role in this may have been way underestimated as just a cover artist. He may be a direct involvement right up there with McCabe. Again, we got McCabe going to sending his key assistant to see Christopher Steele to work out all these transactions, right? We've got them moving heaven and earth with every Five Eyes spy like Downer and all the other spies to cover this activity. We got Warner on the phone with Christopher Steele saying, hey, this can't be traced. These people would not be taking these chances if we weren't talking about something that would be, like box office poison. I mean, political third rail stuff, right?
Yeah. No, it's hard to add any more than that because it's so overwhelming when you think about the levels of corruption and cover-up that's going on with both parties. I mean, it just needs to be cleaned out. That's all him.
Well, do you think some of the documents coming, that we were down earlier at Federal Plaza, we were looking at Loesch, who was responsible for giving over all these documents. How is that process going? 3,600 documents supposedly went to Goodlatte, the
right.
Judiciary Committee.
Yeah, and I think that's why you're having people like Mark Meadows and Jim Jordan of the Judiciary Committee come out and say, enough's enough. You are not producing these documents, and we're not only going to hold you in contempt, we're going to start impeachment proceedings against the people that are in charge of not producing the documents. This is, I think they gave it, 80 years or something it would take them at one point, and then put it down to 52 years, and it's just ridiculous. There should be a team dedicated to getting these documents to the Congress, who are the overseers. They are in charge of the DOJ and FBI.
Okay, I'm going to take some questions now. I still think we're the only people that have drilled down at all on SES. The guy we looked at yesterday, Lamar, or maybe that was this morning, I can't even remember back that far, the guy who was DynCorp?
Yeah.
And he was DynCorp, and then he was this Pathfinder. Is it this thing called Pathfinder?
That was this morning.
That was this morning. My God, everything runs together. Right. But you go back, and he would work for CSC and CACI, and I'm so glad to be an American citizen now. Just this last year, he's worked for all these different defense contractors with all these top secrets, right, going back and forth. I think he probably had a little time with Lockheed as a Pathfinder, right? Whoever. He worked for every one of our top defense contractors, but wasn't a citizen yet. How many more of these Mavneys are there? Right. I mean, these Mavneys are, I think they're mavens is what a better word is, to bring them in and put them in every office possible to buy weapons for your, what do you call it, businesses, disadvantaged businesses.
Yes.
And not even American citizens.
Right.
And how many of these Mavneys, I mean, this whole thing has to be cleaned out. This is
vetting. Like Michael McMahon from the FBI, another whistleblower who was fired by the FBI, has talked about this at length, and that is, we are not vetting. It's intentional. It's not something that it's just because we don't know what the hell we're doing. This is an intentional thing that's happening by the powers that
Yes, Sessions is SES, and we believe Sessions is everybody is involved in this with defense contractors. I don't know if it's going to be everybody on the Senate Armed Services Committee that got into this pay-to-play, but it's going to be most of them. And again, we need a complete rinse and print these documents out. So I'm going to take a few cues. The 17th letter in the alphabet. It sure is. There is a whole bunch of security clearances past Q. Again, I think a lot of these operations got security clearances. They were separate, specialized access programs. But now, for some reason, it seems like a lot of the backbones or backdoors on these things have been broken, and a lot of this stuff is getting leaked. And you just wonder, do you want to be that guy who's doing the illegal weapons for drugs trade and be there at the dock when Imran's 4 containers come in with the yellow cake on top and all the weapons in the bottom and all the drugs
in the cars? Yeah.
Do you really want to be that guy, or do you want to leak a little bit out and just say, hey, everybody, it's in Charleston, probably a good time to take a break from the yellow cake, and you want to leak that out just to save your own people, if nothing else. Okay, we're probably going to leave it right there. It's a beautiful day here in Chicago. We were thinking of going to Wrigley Field. Yeah, sometimes these messages are too long. You can't read them. Yeah, Page and Strokes still have top security clearance.
Yeah, think about that.
That's how you know it's Andy McCabe. I'm not saying Andy McCabe is Strokes, but Andy McCabe still is on that shared Dropbox. He is. He's still getting it. He's sitting over at Cedars. Try to remember, everybody, Andy McCabe, on Tuesday nights, a whole bunch of senators would go over and pray on the other side of the Potomac in Virginia at a place called the Cedars. This is a place famous for giving religion to senators who had been convicted of or had affairs. So that was going to make them all better. Well, Andy, I think, still is over at Cedars. He's still having fun over there, and he needs to be eliminated from that. Is Brennan on the Dropbox? What do you think? I think Brennan's all over that Dropbox.
Absolutely.
And Samantha Powers is still on the Dropbox. I believe Susan Rice is still on the Dropbox.
Well, Susan Rice, literally, McMaster is the one that came out and said to continue Susan Rice's security clearance. He's now been removed, McMaster has.
Yeah.
But he's the guy that wrote the letter to continue Susan Rice, security clearance.
So people want an update on my lawsuits. Okay, so there was 3. 2 of them are against the DNC, and the second one I added Fusion GPS when I realized how much they were a part of destroying people's reputations. Did Fusion GPS make the call to New York Times, make the call to CNN for my parallel construction in Ohio, because I was working the Uranium One thing? We don't really know that at this point. We do know that I didn't call the Coast Guard. Another compadre of mine at that time did. We do know I had no idea where the Maersk was, right? So all I was doing was contributing to the crowdsourced information that at the time. We do know that I mentioned the Maersk because I was given it by the Echelon Group and forwarding that on. We weren't even sure if it was a city or a ship at the time, right? But yet, I told Donnie at CNN, I told Melee at New York Times that where he heard the phone call, that I received 5 calls from the Coast Guard, Border Patrol, and DHS, each time informing them, and I said, no, the only corrective action you need to do is check the 4 containers if they say a 1 and they're under diplomatic cover. That's the only thing you need to do, because, oh, by the way, guys, you only test in the Port of Qasim. And your senator, Lindsey Graham, has said there's a likely dirty bomb attack. I never even used the word bomb, but I later found out that the senator from South Carolina predicted there would be a dirty bomb attack there, right? So that type of targeting, when you have a dirty tricks squad, what would we call it? Like masquerading as journalism, where you're planning false stories about somebody to ruin their reputation. When you're blaming them for your illegal weapons trade, illegal drug trade, illegal uranium trade that you've stolen from the American people. Well, that's probably somebody that needs to be called on the carpet. And still to this day, Glenn Simpson's been served and never responded to my complaint. If you were innocent, you would respond to the complaint. I currently have a motion for partial summary judgment against Glenn Simpson of Fusion GPS to produce all of his financial records, all of his communications with the DNC, with the Podesta Group, with ARMZ, with Uranium One, with the Andy McCabe and the FBI, with DHS, and all the different news outlets that he's worked with. Now later an article came out in the Washington Post that also kind of took me on, not quite as unfair, but still left out all these key facts. Still, no one's reported that I told the FBI agents that I met that night that that Imran Awan was running a guns for weapons ring under the cover of uranium trade into the port of South Carolina. Still hasn't come out. Did Andy McCabe run that operation because he had taken over the FBI in May? The month before that, did he see us in Yonkers figuring out the stolen car thing that month? Did he see us figuring out the auto train? Did he see us figuring out the whole NNSA thing? Who knows? We don't really know. But it did happen under Andy McCabe's watch, and we did get railroaded by the New York Times and CNN. So that's why we added Fusion GPS when we realized their critical hatchet man's role with the DNC. So that's the second lawsuit. The attorneys in those two lawsuits combined those two lawsuits and said they were related cases. That's how the judges switched from the Awans Judge Chutkan and my judge Rudy Contreras to just Rudy Contreras. So those first two cases are really kind of DNC cases. Anthony Weiner's a part of that, of course. And Rahm Emanuel's not listed, although I probably should have listed him. But the Awans are key parts of that. And then also the House Inspector General is also named for breach of fiduciary duty for not publicizing the fact that people were giving $220 million to Bernie Sanders, and they had no idea that that money and information was being swept from NGP Van and Act Blue. And they fully well knew that the candidates in the DCCC were being targeted with phishing attacks, yet did not make that public to the public. So those are the first two lawsuits. The third lawsuit really does have to do with this Uranium One and me saying that they were using the containers, they were using the uranium trade. NNSA was using the uranium trade under cover of law to affect a drugs for weapons network, and using compromise with different hacking teams and so forth to facilitate this trade and attack people and take their economic assets. And the first suit is a class action lawsuit. I believe it's for around $300 million. I just took the number that Jared Beck took, although I had a lot more evidence than Jared Beck, just because I filed about a year later. And then the second part was, for my lawsuit, is only $12 million. And most of that is for the production of documents. I'm not really trying to punish the FBI. I'm not trying to punish DHS. I'm not trying to punish John Brennan at CIA. So that's why it's only $12 million. If I really was to send a signal, it probably should be much higher than that. But it's only for recompense for damages. So that's why it's only $12 million. Are both sides guilty? Yeah, I would say all the DNC is guilty. Podesta Group is guilty. Fusion GPS is guilty. CIA is guilty. A small cabal within FBI, which is kind of this NNSA group inside the FBI, is guilty. I agree with all those things. So that's a long-winded update, but that's where we are today. Now, we had a lot of people, McCabe's spokesman, who come to the channel saying that those cases would be thrown out summarily as soon as they could be in January. That's not the case. They're still gaining steam, actually, here in April. And every day, more evidence comes out that there was this collusion. That once you, well, by the way, I have the same judge that Mike Flynn had, which is Rudy Contreras. As soon as you start falsifying evidence, like falsifying a 302, and you present that witness as Andy McCabe in court, he has no credibility. Because the standard for a law enforcement officer not to falsify evidence is much higher than a witness, wouldn't you say? You being an expert witness.
It's a crime.
Yeah, but it's a higher standard if the jury finds out, right, that you falsified evidence.
Right. I mean, yeah, you can't. The case would be thrown out of court, but the officer or law enforcement officer would be charged with a crime. It's a crime.
Felony.
Right,
yeah.
Absolutely, felony.
Yeah.
Hired, be charged with a crime, and be on trial for falsifying evidence.
And so this is why we think, Andy McCabe, I mean, it's not going to probably be avoidable that he is charged with this, falsifying this evidence. This information is going to come to the fore. All these leaks, no matter how many little scrawls of paper, we're hearing Dana Boente wrote a scrawl of paper that agreed with the Comey, typing in his limousine after he talked with Trump. None of this stuff is going to hold water. It's not going to agree with the rest of the metadata, no matter how many rear guard actions they try to take to say, I remember that. I just happened to this one time make a scrawl of paper. Dana Boente was the Attorney General for the Northern District of Virginia. He's also been the Southern District or the District of Maryland. So he kind of plays a utility infielder role for when they need backup. So you're going to be learning and hearing the name Dana Boente quite a bit more in the coming months. So that was a long-winded, well, not long-winded, actually probably a pretty short summary of all the different lawsuits. But I thought that was going good here. There's a lot of people out there, McCabe spokesmen, I'll just put them all in, the haters all in the general category of McCabe spokesmen that want to sue the port of, or provide more information to the FBI, provide more information to Charleston. Bring it on. All the discovery is going to just be super helpful in this whole matter. All the communications that were involved with who called the FBI and all the communications from all these lawsuits are going to bring out all the information. So it's going to be a super helpful thing, even though it's the most destructive possible activity that a person could possibly engage in, which is going after the people that are actually trying to save the democracy. As contemptible as it is, it still has the side benefit of producing metadata for our investigations. So, and I'm going to leave it right there. Gosh, we had a whole bunch of people watch this. 260 people. Task Force, I did most of the 99% of the talking.
I like it that way.
You like it that way?
I like being the researcher and that kind of stuff. So no, I always want to say thank you to all the researchers and the people participating and providing. They work tirelessly behind the scenes, as whether you're a whistleblower or just a researcher trying to help them, trying to establish rule of law in our country, equity, fairness, integrity, all the things that this country, was founded on, and that's where we all want to go, and that's what we're all after. So the inner fighting between people is ridiculous. It's a waste of time. Go for the problems. Stop the other stuff.
Silvas, I remember that was the guy's name now, Silvas, because it was like silver. This guy is just never bothered to become a citizen, but is I always say, gun your engine if you're a drug dealer for rum. So if we hear another gunning of the engines, you have identified yet another drug dealer for rum. We haven't heard any sirens.
Yeah, it's kind of odd the last couple of days, the lack of sirens, so I'm thinking...
No rambulances.
Yeah, no rambulances, no booster seats on fire trucks.
No rambulances. Right. Oh, we got another drug dealer. There we go.
That's the new
thing? The drug dealer?
Right.
Yeah.
Rev your engine.
It would be nice to hear a couple of motorcycles revving to see if ROM uses motorcycle couriers.
That's true. That's a good idea, but maybe in a dress.
Maybe in a dress, yeah.
Right,
maybe.
It's complicated to ride a motorcycle in a dress.
That's true.
So you have to think about that.
Okay, well, there you go. That's a visual for everybody to have. You might need to go to counseling now to get that out of your head. Okay, thanks everybody. Sorry we're a little bit not quite as prepared because we had so much trouble with the streaming that it was just difficult to get it all going today. But I think we covered all the bases, all the big stories. Right. And we'll probably go back and look at some news now and look at the comments here and then maybe have another response a little bit later. Thanks, everyone, from Chicago. You want to just salute?
I'm saluting you from behind the camera. There's my hand.
There's her hand. Okay. just to show task force is real.